Hello, my name is Tonya Archie, and I will be talking about cognitive and language development. Let's start with some wonders. Have you ever wondered why babies lose interest when something is out of sight? What about when that young child has difficulty distinguishing whether or not something in one glass is the same as it is in another glass, even though the only thing that changed was the glass? How about why it's hard for kids to explain things from the point of view of someone else? And last, have you ever wondered why Johnny just does not get the joke? Well, hopefully I'll make some of those things clear by going through this. We're going to talk a little bit about Jean Piaget. He was a Swiss biologist and philosopher. He was born in 1896. He was one of the most influential researchers of the 20th century. He was mainly into developmental psychology, and he's noted for studying the origin of how we know what it is that we know. Most of his work was based on observing his daughter and his nephew. These observations resulted in him determining that there are universal levels of growth development. Let's start with the learning scale. If you can identify 3 or more stages of language development and cognitive development, then you have successfully learned something from my little PowerPoint. So if you can't identify any at this time, please give yourself a 0. If you can identify 2, give yourself a 1. If you can identify 3, give yourself a 2. If you can identify all 4, as I said before, then please just enjoy my video. The first is sensory motor stage. This usually is accomplished between birth and the age of 2. If we look at the cognitive side, you'll notice that children learn through their 5 senses: sight, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. Their movement is due to reflex. There's really no goal to their directed actions. And there is symbolic thought. The other thing is object permanence. In this instance is whether or not that child knows to look for something. By the time they're 2, they should really be looking for objects, or at least have missed them. On the language part, there's sucking, babbling, cooing, and hollow phrases. For hollow phrases, for instance, the word no, it could mean, I don't want a biscuit, or no, don't touch me, or no, that's mine. It could mean any of those things. One of the most interesting things I found in language was that sucking is part of language. When a baby is nursing, they will generally suck in a rhythmic motion, whereas they are having a conversation with the person who is feeding them. They will suck, and if you begin to talk to them, they'll stop sucking and listen. And once you're done or there's a pause, they'll begin to suck again. This is the same sort of turn taking you do in a conversation. Next, I'll show you a quick short video from YouTube regarding object permanence. to answer one of the questions of our wonders.
What do you have there? Is that your yummy giraffe? Let me see.
Notice how quickly she stops looking for it and starts to manipulate other items.
Where's that giraffe? Good.
Next, we have pre-operational. This is from 2 to 7 years old. And pre-operational, it's hard to say, you have on the side of cognitive, there's intuition thought, there's difficulty with centering and conservation, there's egocentrism, concern with survival, and on the language part, we move from one word now to 2-word sentences. There's telegraphic speech, and there's overgeneralization. In overgeneralization, everything is up, everything is tree. When it comes to egocentrism, children have a really hard time telling you something from someone else's point of view. As you can see from our cartoon here, he says, want to see something weird? Watch. You put bread in the slot and push down the lever. Then in a few minutes, toast pops up. Wow, where's the bread go? Beats me, isn't that weird? Has no idea that's the same item. Now here you'll see how this little boy, when he's describing what he sees, it's all about what he sees. He has no clue what the other person sees.
Can you tell me what you see when you look at that from where you're sitting? What are some of the things that you see?
A cat,
A cat.
and a tree, and a bone.
Okay, now we're going to do the same thing. Can you tell me what you see when you look at it from that stool?
An owl,
An owl.
and him.
What is that?
A goat.
A goat. Okay, is there anything else you see?
Yeah, right there.
Right there, what is that?
A tree.
A tree.
And that's
Another little tree. All right. And can you tell me what I see when I look at this from where I'm sitting right here?
Owl,
Okay.
and a goat,
Mm-hmm.
and a little tree, and that, and that.
See, he has no idea
Okay, so can you...
what she's seeing. He only knows what he sees, so that's all that counts. Concrete operations. This is from 7 to 11 years old, and on the cognitive side, words and sentences become much longer. Children start holding even longer conversations. Usually that's when parents want them to be quiet. I know I say that a lot in my class. Please stop talking. They also begin to have jokes and word plays. I know the students in my class really love telling jokes. That's all I hear when we're at recess. As far as language, they perform, I flipped them. Actually for cognitive, they perform concrete operations. They use a lot of hands-on thinking. Usually we use a lot of manipulatives. Also, they have logical thinking. So if it doesn't quite make sense, they don't get it. But as they get closer to 11 years old and older, then they start to get things. Also, conservation. That is where I was talking about the water, where you have water in 2 cups. You move the water from one cup to the other one, and the child can't tell if it's the same. I actually have an example of that. And then also for language, I'll go over that again since I did flip them. The words do become sentences, and they do begin to enjoy jokes and wordplay. And then here's my my example. What did one plate say to the other? Lunch is on me. All right, so here's our example of conservation.
Can you look at these 2 glasses? Do you think that they have the same amount of juice? You think they have the same? Okay. Now we're going to pour this juice into this glass. Now, do you think that this glass has more juice? This glass has more juice? Or do you think that they have the same amount?
That one has more.
This one has more? And why do you think that this one has more?
Because it's taller.
So I actually did this with my class at the beginning of the year while I still had some 6-year-olds in my class. I'm a 2nd grade teacher, by the way. And the ones who were 7 or 8, they were upset at the younger ones because they didn't realize that it was the same. They only realized that because it was taller, that it was different. But as we moved through the year and they got older and they learned more and their brains began to develop more, they were able to tell the difference. Okay, now we come to our last, formal operations, from 11 to adulthood. So, for cognitive, there's a lot of scientific reasoning. There's some deductive reasoning, adolescent egocentrism, you know, those teenagers, is all about me and what I want to do and how I want to do it. I don't want to listen to you, Mom and Dad. And then there's that imaginary audience. Oh my goodness. You know how teenagers and a lot of, you know, those early adults, they really worry about what their friends have to say about them. And they are going to dress and do things that they think are acceptable by the subgroups that they're in. Also, the personal fable. I think that is more or less where they have no fear of a lot of things. They don't realize that some things may really harm you. Now, they'll be able to tell you, but they really don't feel that that's actually going to happen. They're going to survive everything. As far as language, a lot of sarcasm. You know, they have a lot to say. Slang is very prevalent once they come into 11 to adulthood. And then there's a lot of verbal dueling, arguing, trying to be quick with their wits. Here's some of that slang. This probably isn't up to date because a lot of kids don't say these things. Cool, awesome, and hip. And then I like this one right here, which I believe was on a test of a teacher, which it says find the X, and here it is. And they circle that and then don't do the problem. So to answer our wonder question, I do have a video.
Hammer, the glass will break.
So it's going to show you how they go from concrete operational into the more formal.
To the glass.
It broke
It broke. Why did it break?
because the handle's hard.
If you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break. And this is the second rule. Don hit a glass with a feather. What happened to the glass? Nothing happened. Why didn't anything happen?
Because it fell apart.
Glass with a
There's that
feather,
critical
the glass will
thinking.
break.
gets the joke. And here's another one. Who's the shortest person?
In the third eye experiment, Piaget asked 9 and 11-year-old subjects where they would place a third eye on their bodies if they could. Most 9-year-olds said the forehead, while 11-year-olds gave many other explanations and reasons, showing that they were thinking critically and more abstractly during this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Piaget. All right, and then we move on. Partner talk. Hopefully you have a partner. Say the first partner, or you can just write your answer down. So tell your partner which stage you think is most important for cognitive development and why. Then, tell your partner which stage you think is most important for language development and why. All right, back to our learning scale. If you can now identify 0, please give yourself a 0. I'm really hoping that you don't have 0. Then, if you can identify at least 2, give yourself a 1. If you can identify 3, give yourself a 2. And if you can identify 4, give yourself a 3. Thank you very much. That concludes my PowerPoint. Thank you.